All right, so I'm in the beginning of my system startup here. So this is the stuff chapter 5 is about. So the computer started up, BIOS kicks in, or the UEFI BIOS kicks in, runs its quick system check, and then it looks for a bootloader, found GRUB. GRUB started. GRUB offers, do you want to boot Rocky Linux, this kernel, or do you want to boot the rescue kernel? So I paused here by just hitting the down arrow as soon as the GRUB screen came up. Otherwise, GRUB usually has like a 3 to 5 second timer, sometimes longer, where it just automatically kicks in with whatever the first line is. If you want to edit a line, hit E on that line and you can jump in and edit it. Suppose you need to get into single user mode in your system, you would go find the Linux line and then get to the end of it and just type single. And then if you boot with that, it'll get you into single Linux mode. So here it says Control X or F10 to boot with these commands. So F10, see what happens. And let's get there. In a moment, it should bring up a message saying that I am in rescue mode or single user mode, and that I should log in as root. Do something else. It is unhappy about something. You're stuck on, buddy. All right, it's unstuck now. Sometimes hitting enter helps. So it wants the root password. Hopefully you have that noted somewhere. And then you can jump in as the super user and do whatever maintenance that you need to do. And when you're done with that, then reboot to get the regular kernel back up and running. Here, I'm going to pause in the grub command line again. All right, so I haven't done this one yet, but the Rocky rescue mode is probably the same thing that I just did, or it's going to be a slightly smaller kernel that's going to have just enough tools for me to run whatever maintenance tasks I need to. So that'd be something to explore in the near future. Instead, I'm going to jump into the grub command line. So suppose neither of your kernels there will boot, then you got to kind of play around with grub. So first thing I might do in grub here is do help to see what commands are available to me. And you can page through this. I'm going to do an ls to see what it sees. So again, grub's a bootloader, so it's looking for hard drives and partitions on those hard drives. And so let's take a look at, and you usually have tab completion here. And then I hit tab and it's giving me some information. Okay, so the first one is the MS-DOS one and there's the MS-DOS 2. First file system is XFS. And looking at the size here, it looks to be about a gigabyte. And then the next one picks up where it left off and it's about 20 gigabytes there. So let's take a look at the first partition. And I can see what's in there. So there's an EFI directory and a GRUB2 and a loader, and you can see there's my kernel. So this would be the boot directory. And well, let's see what's in EFI. Not much. All right, let's check out GRUB2. Big. Let's check the i386. Whoa, lots of stuff in there. And let's get out of that. And is there a grub file in there? All right, what else might be good to find in there? And I do something like star. Oops, I'm in the wrong place. Does grub recognize wildcard characters? It's not. Okay. You just got to kind of scan through manually looking for stuff. And I saw, let's see, there's a command, what is it? Pager sets. Boot is set to partition 1 on hard drive 1. Root is set to the same. Pager is set to 1. Okay. So that means it'll pause at whatever the height of my screen is when it's showing me lines when I do something like help. So notice the more comes up at the bottom because the pager is set to recognize that that's one full set of lines for the screen that we're on and we're looking at here. And so I might want to say boot a USB drive. And so then I would probably want the USB drive plugged in ahead of time and hope my UEFI BIOS saw it, and then it would probably feed GRUB that information, or GRUB would be able to notice that I could try and boot into a USB flash drive instead. And so often things we might do here would be to try and find a bootable device, and then if it's not already set the root. So then we might do something like set root. And then once we set the root, if it wasn't already set, then we do something like get a chain loader going. So we would do the chain loader. Let's see, is this gonna, yep, cool. And then we look in there for something to jump into. And so there's a bunch of modules. At the moment, I don't see much else besides modules. And so often what we're looking for is like an EFI file to boot with. So somewhere in here, it's in loader, the conf files. I didn't find anything in EFI earlier. It's like I need to learn more about where Rocky puts its files, but somewhere in here is the file I want to send to the chain loader. And once I give the chain loader the right entry, then we would run boot after that to try and boot with that. Since I don't see it here at the moment, I'm just gonna forget about the chain loader. So one thing I want you to do is just play around here a little bit, check out some grub commands. lsmod will show us the modules that are available here on boot. Learn more about modules later. And the help menu lists a bunch of other commands, and there's a few listed in the book. So just play around. You're unlikely to do too much damage here, if any. And when we're done here, we can escape out and then boot what we wish. And let's see if I go make sure my single user mode is off there. Yeah, so I rebooted, so the single user mode is off, right? I put it in there before, that was just temporary, because each time GRUB loads, it looks at the configuration files that it's been fed. And if you haven't already read through this chapter, there is information about how to adjust the GRUB configuration files and then feed that information over to GRUB, the bootloader, to use whatever kernel configurations you set up. All right, that's it for playing with GRUB for now. Have fun, good luck. Let's boot.